When Titanic was released in 1997, audiences around the world were swept away by its romance, tragedy, and scale. It was more than just a movie, it was a cultural event. Directed by James Cameron and starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, the film told the story of Jack and Rose, two fictional lovers aboard the ill-fated RMS Titanic. But what many don't realize is that the behind-the-scenes story of Titanic was nearly as dramatic, perilous, and awe-inspiring as the movie itself. It took nearly 5 years of planning, filming, rewriting, reshoots, and overcoming real-life disasters to bring Titanic to the screen. There were budget crises, accidents, illnesses, conflicts, technical nightmares, and even a mysterious poisoning on set. What was supposed to be a romantic historical drama became a cinematic war zone, and no one walked away from it unchanged. James Cameron didn't just make a movie. He orchestrated a real-life expedition into obsession, ambition, and chaos. Titanic was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, and everything about its production was extreme. From building a near full-scale replica of the ship to dunking the cast and crew into ice-cold water, the journey behind Titanic was a survival story of its own. This is the untold tale of how one of the greatest love stories ever told was forged in the fires of real-life intensity. To understand why Titanic was such a massive undertaking, you have to understand the man behind it, James Cameron. By the time he began developing the film in the early 1990s, Cameron was already known for his obsession with detail and high-stakes filmmaking. He had directed The Terminator, Aliens, and The Abyss, each one pushing the limits of technology and storytelling. But with Titanic, he wanted more. He didn't just want to tell a story. He wanted to make you feel like you were on the Titanic. James Cameron's obsession with the real Titanic began in the 1980s. He was fascinated by the tragedy, the grandeur of the ship, and the human stories buried beneath the ocean. When he learned that scientists had located the real wreck of the Titanic in 1985, his imagination took hold. He became determined to make a film that would be both historically accurate and emotionally powerful. He pitched the movie to 20th Century Fox not just as a historical romance, but as Romeo and Juliet on a sinking ship. The studio was skeptical. The budget Cameron demanded was astronomical. Initial estimates hovered around $100 million, but it would eventually exceed $200 million. For comparison, that's over $350 million today when adjusted for inflation. What finally sold the idea was Cameron's passion and his proposal to actually film the wreck of the Titanic. That's right. Before the movie even started production, Cameron organized a deep-sea expedition to the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean, where the remains of the ship lie. Using special submersibles and IMAX cameras, Cameron and his team filmed the real Titanic 12,500 feet below the surface. These haunting shots of the decaying ship would later appear in the film's opening scenes, lending authenticity and emotional weight. From the beginning, Titanic was not a movie. It was an obsession. Cameron wanted everything to be perfect, from the color of the wallpaper in the dining room to the way the ship cracked in half. He studied blueprints, read survivor accounts, and consulted historians. He demanded that even background extras in scenes knew the names and backstories of the characters they were portraying. He wanted the audience to feel the grandeur of the ship, the scale of the disaster, and the intimacy of the love story, all at once. But such ambition came at a cost. As pre-production began, it became clear that making Titanic would be unlike any film ever made. The sets would be enormous. The technology would be cutting edge. The pressure would be unrelenting. In the words of one crew member, "We were building the Titanic, and it felt like we were going down with it." You can't tell the story of the Titanic without the Titanic itself. But when James Cameron decided to make the film, he quickly discovered that recreating a 46,000-ton luxury ocean liner, down to its smallest detail, was going to be a titanic challenge of its own. The solution? Build the ship, and that's exactly what they did. The Titanic replica, bigger than imaginable. Instead of relying solely on CGI, miniatures, or green screens, Cameron insisted on realism. He believed that the audience needed to feel the grandeur of the Titanic, not just see it. So, The production team constructed a near full-scale replica of the ship in Rosarito, Mexico, at a custom-built studio complex that Fox constructed just for this film. The massive set included the entire starboard side of the ship, complete with lifeboats, smokestacks, and the grand staircase. The crew even replicated the ship's exterior finish, lifeboat cranes, and rivets with incredible accuracy. When seen from the right angles, it was indistinguishable from the real RMS Titanic. The replica was built on a hydraulically controlled platform inside a colossal water tank. This allowed the crew to tilt the ship during sinking scenes and control flooding sequences with terrifying precision. They even built an enormous gimbal to simulate the tilting of the deck as the ship sank. This tank, known as the Rosarito tank, held 17 million gallons of seawater and was the size of 5 football fields. It was located just off the Pacific Ocean and gave the appearance of open sea, perfect for simulating night shots without relying on CGI. At the time, it was the largest man-made water tank in the world, sets within sets, a floating palace beyond the exterior. Cameron also ordered the construction of detailed interior sets that were historically accurate. The grand staircase, first-class dining room, smoking lounge, and staterooms were recreated to the inch. Set designers used original blueprints from Harland and Wolff, the Belfast shipbuilders who constructed the real Titanic, and many of the furnishings were handmade replicas based on photographs from 1912. These interiors weren't just built for show. They were flooded, burned, and tilted repeatedly during filming. Every chair, dish, and lamp had to be bolted down or rigged to move safely during the chaotic sinking scenes. Actors and stunt performers ran through these corridors as water burst through windows and doors, sometimes at terrifying speeds. The production even went so far as to age the sets to appear more authentic. Carpets were dyed and burned. Walls were hand-painted to reflect Edwardian elegance. Gold leaf was applied to moldings. In some cases, the detailing on sets would never even be fully visible on screen, but Cameron didn't care. It had to be real. For him, the set itself was a character, technical mayhem, and creative genius to film the ship in motion. Multiple techniques were used. Miniatures were built for wide shots, but they were anything but small. Some spanned over 40 feet in length and were filmed on massive motion control rigs. When shooting the sinking scenes, Cameron orchestrated complicated sequences that involved dozens of stuntmen, controlled explosions, thousands of gallons of water, and motion platforms. The climactic scene where the stern rises into the air and breaks apart was filmed using a section of the ship mounted vertically with actors sliding down its length. Harnesses were used for safety, but injuries were still common. All of this required intense coordination. One mistake meant days of delays and hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. Cameron's attention to detail and his insistence on realism pushed his crew to their limits. Equipment failed. Timelines slipped. Budgets ballooned. But the end result was undeniable. Titanic didn't look like a movie. It felt like history, as Cameron once said. We weren't making a film. We were launching a time machine. A breeding ground for exhaustion filming in Mexico presented its own challenges. The remote location meant that crew and cast were isolated from family, stuck in demanding 16-hour workdays, and often soaked and freezing. The salt water wreaked havoc on equipment. The heat during the day was unbearable, and the water temperature during night shoots was near freezing. Many actors and extras became ill or injured. Some developed hypothermia. Others suffered long-term exhaustion. The strain on the crew became so intense that some referred to the experience as Titanic boot camp. For some, it was the most grueling project of their lives. For others, it was a career-defining moment,